was pretty.
6 o'clock.
Closing toilet.
We will call the meeting to order. This is the
man.
Lake Lebanon Conservative District annual meeting. I am filling in for Les this month. He wasn't able to make it, so as I guess the vice chair, I get to fill in his position. First, we'll open things up to public comments. If anybody has anything they'd like to bring to our attention, please keep your comments to under 3 minutes. We'll let you know where you're at on your time. And if you come up, just introduce yourself. And if you know your district, let us know what you're in and what you're thinking about. Okay, no comments this month. Next, we'll approve last meeting's minutes. Was there any conversation around the minutes?
I wasn't at the meeting, so.
In the manager's report, it says that the lake was gonna have a 3-foot drawdown. Wasn't that 2 feet?
No, it was 3 foot.
It was 3 foot?
Yes.
Did it ever get that far?
Yeah, you did.
Per day.
For a day.
It didn't last
Only
very
a
long.
day, yeah.
No, he had to last.
Any other comments on there? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion. Minutes?
I will approve that the minutes be approved.
Second.
I will make a motion that the minutes be approved.
Got a
No,
motion and a second, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes. Anybody against? All right, minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to the treasurer's report with Deb.
Okay, well, this has got a lot. We've got like 3 months worth of financials to look at, so I think we should at least just get to December anyway. When we look at the financials, but overall, the net income for November year to date is about $329,000. We had deposited and received much of our tax income. And we have at the end of November, sorry, I'm paging up here. Overall, we had $210,000 in our cumulative conservancy fund. Our total checking and savings was almost 1.5 million, 550,000 in the savings account, $1,000 in the construction account, and 800 and some $1,000 in CDs. Overall, we had fixed assets of 503,000, so just under $2 million in overall assets. We made our bond payments this year, which took off 60,000 in principal, so we owe $915,000 in our bonds payable. For the month of November itself, though, I guess the taxes got deposited in December. The month of November itself, we only had income of about $9,600. We had expenses of $91,000. That included $40,000, $250 for our bond repayment and disposal site preparation of about $18,000. If there's any questions on the November financials, I will move on to the claims. There's all kinds of pretty charts and graphs here for all you guys. Conciliations. The November reported claims totals $86,633.48. $7,065 consists of payroll, and of the remaining $79,568.02 claims, as I mentioned, there was the bond repayment about $40,000. We had office kind of renovation work after all our damage of about $10,000, and then we did spend around $18,000 on possum tractor removal. So those were the key items. So any questions on the claims? If none, I'd ask for a motion to approve the November claims.
I will make a motion to approve the November 2nd.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Brad.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay, all righty, thank you. Next, we've got the December financial update, and I'll spend a little bit more time on that because it is our year end, and I'm sure Adam will cover several of these things in his manager's report since it's the annual financials. But as far as at the balance sheet, we had a total of, at the end of December, $2,340,000 in total assets. Our total checking and savings accounts were about $1.8 million. You'll see the construction account went up and it totals $189,230. It had an increase of about $153,000, and I added that all and I checked that all, and that was basically our special benefits tax from the November payments that came in. Minor payroll liabilities, bonds payable $915,000. Net income of about $730,000, $441.23. Now, because of the way the government does the P&Ls and things like that, you'll see that this number is exactly $60,000 greater than the net income for the P&L, and that's because it was the principal payments on the bonds. But you basically, for the State Board of Accounts, really, it's kind of any cash in, cash out. So for the P&L, we had wetland planting. It was about $23,000. It was paid out of the construction fund. That was probably our biggest expense. It was half of our expenses. For November, we had total expenses of $45,905. We had total income of $386,575, and that was mostly comprised of the tax income that was deposited. Any questions or comments on? I think I'd like to maybe shift to, if you've got the PDF open, page 40 or PDF, that's just basically compares 2025 to 2024. And I'll just point out a couple of the major differences between the years. The wakeboard fee, we got a little bit more money on that, about $3,600 more, so a total of $9,140. Special events, we spent less on, we had less income on that. We only had $26,800 on that. The prior year was the eclipse, and we had like $41,000, I think, in income there. And thankfully, the park admission fees actually were up $9,000 from the prior year for a total of $84,000. So overall, our total income for 2025 was just about $30,000 more than the year before, at $1,357,991. On the expense side of things, when you compare it to the prior year, as you know, Ross left early, so we basically spent less on our operations supervisor, $40,000 versus $55,000 the year before. We did have seasonal labor, which was higher. We did add security staff, FTE for that. So I think that's the reason for that increase.
And we had some overlap training on the admin positions.
Okay. Yeah, chime in anything you want to. The State Board of Accounts audit only cost us $6,000 this year. It was far less than what we had budgeted because they went from having private pro basically do it back, and they pulled it back in-house of the State Board of Accounts. Other major differences were building and grounds expense. We spent about $23,000 this year compared to $11,000 last year. I'm not sure exactly what that was from, but I know we talked about taking out the cumulative conservancy fund, and we decided we had room in the budget, so we took it out of here. We had dredging equipment maintenance. I think that was that whole rebuild of.
Yeah, I had to replace a motor on the small barge. One of the old Yamahas went out, so we put a new Yamaha 150 barge.
We spent a lot less on lakeweed retreatment. We spent $30,000 this year. The year before, we spent almost $46,000, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Find out something on our water report.
I mean, I think a lot of that can be attributed to the precipitation we had up through July. So whenever we have a lot of turbidity and sediment in the water, you don't have as much of light penetration. So we don't have vegetative growth until later on in the year.
The water stayed cold up till July too,
Yeah, that'll stunt growth. And then, obviously with the staff being reduced as well, the time on the water, we did have a later treatment than we normally would as well, trying to catch up on that. But I would say primarily it's from the precipitation and turbidity levels in the springtime.
Okay. We had ramp repairs of the prior year of like 12,500. We didn't have those this year. We did purchase that work boat this year in 2025 that we purchased it. I think we got a great deal on it from Steve.
Yeah, it was just under $5,000 for the pontoon, which is a great
And
deal.
we had it budgeted at 15, I think. And of course, we did not have our sediment mitigation expenditures this year. Last year, we spent $1,031,000 in that. So overall, our expenses this year for 2025 for the year were $687,550 versus $1,575,968 the year before. So we're sitting at net income of $670,000, and check it in your mind that the balance sheet was so 730. And last year it was a loss of about $250,000. Any questions or comments? You'll notice that when you get to the PDF pages like 43 and 44, those basically compare what we budgeted, to what we actually spent. And on any line item that we spent more, we've got to make transfers within for the State Board of Accounts purposes. So I don't know if that's the next resolution, but if not, we're going to be asking for that.
Yeah, after the report of claims, be the transfer funds. And that's just so we can keep track of what we actually spent within line items. So everything is within the general fund. So it's one singular fund in the eyes of the State Board of Account, but we break it down into line items for our tracking. So this allows us to see what we actually spent in the line items and make sure that we're staying over our overall allotted budget for the general fund.
Any questions or comments? Guys are an easy crowd. Okay, December reported claims. We're asking for the approval of vouchers totaling $40,413.40. Of that, $8,287.89 is payroll related. The large items, which I think were kind of mentioned, of the other $32,000 and some change, $23,000 was for wetland planting. We spent $2,200 on, I think, some kind of office stuff. I'm just trying to remember what that is. I must have left something out. I say office. And
Yeah, that was the final payment for Harris Restoration. We had the water line break in the bathroom that flooded everything out, so had to redo floors, walls, the bathroom.
that was the final payment.
Out of all that, I think we recouped about $15,000 from insurance. The overall work was closer to $20,000, and that's because there was some just dated stuff while they were there we had to replace, like some of our entry doors, storm doors, some flooring, interior work. But we figured why they were there, we might as well knock it out. And then once we tore into the walls, there was mold remediation, which added on to that. So we got a pretty nice office refreshed out there.
We're gonna come take a tour. And we paid $2,700 to Premier for, I guess, natural gas.
That's for unleaded gas.
Unleaded gas.
Unleaded
So I was
gas,
like,
yeah.
I always pay them for like my tank.
Yeah, they fill our diesel tanks unleaded. So that's just our unleaded fuel tanks that we have there on the property.
There are no questions. Can I get a motion to approve the claims for December, $40,413.40?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Okay.
So I can talk on the transfers real quick if you want the next one.
That's fine. I checked them all out. That's fine. Go for it.
Yeah, the seasonal labor, that was primarily from Ross leaving the operations supervisor position. So our admin took on additional roles. Additionally, in November, we brought on our new admin and did some overlap training, which was very nice. Lily, who was here prior with us, is going to finish her schooling. The $2,500 for signs and nautical markers, that was primarily for new buoys post dredging that mark the shallow areas. And then also for the construction of our wake enhancement zone signage that we have there. The consulting, engineering, the Baker Tilly arbitrage, compliance reporting, that was a back payment that had billed us for 3 or 4 years, and then we got that bill. So it would not be that much generally. The $20,000 in Harris restoration, and that was, so $20,498 was the final repairs that we did all at the office. Again, we recouped about $15,000 of that from insurance. And then the $18,303 for dredging equipment maintenance, that was the replacement and installation on the barge motor, as well as replacing the fuel tank on our excavator. So that was all our small barge and associated equipment maintenance.
So we need to ask for an approval, make a motion to approve the transfer of funds between the budget line items.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, all those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right,
Motion
transfer of funds carries.
Okay, January, I'm gonna hit this quick because it doesn't look a lot different than what we talked about December, but overall, our checking and savings account total $1,788,217. We do have $500,000 in fixed assets, but Adam, just make a note we do need to add that truck to the capital assets. We purchased a truck for $37,999. You'll see it in the P&L, but it's not in here, so we need Yvonne to make a double entry to get that done. Income statement side, we had $23,000 in income. 11,500 was from licenses, and we had interest income of a little over $8,000. We had $4,900 in wetland planting, and of course, as I mentioned, we bought the LLCD pickup truck for $37,999. So we had income of $23,773.39, expenses of $72,654.37. Overall net loss for the month $48,880.98. And it's just too early to even compare it to budget. Any questions or comments on January? Okay, so lastly, I'm looking for the motion for January. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the January reported claims totaling $64,557.36. As I mentioned, the lion's share of that was the purchase of the truck at $37,999. I don't know if you want to explain the nice truck or not.
Yeah, we got a new work truck. The previous one was a 2013 GMC, and it's a work truck. So we got something that could represent the district and just a nice one to have in town and stuff. We kept the other truck. Trade-in values are very low for a all manual single cab GMC, but we kept it because it is still good for doing some of our disposal site work, stuff on the property. So we'll be keeping the other trucks. We do have 2 vehicles with the Conservancy District now.
The regular claims were $57,816.48. That includes that truck. We had some permits, stickers, and passes we purchased, and that little bit of wetland planting that I was talking about. And then also, I wasn't sure what this was for Anderson. It was removal and replacement of park.
So that was all the bollards around the park. Yeah, I don't think have been replaced since the park had been there, and through mowing and weed eating, there's falling over and vehicles could drive in. They tore them out, so we replaced all the bollards around the park. And actually, Chris will be going through and staining those once it gets nice out, so that'll look good. And then we will be doing blacktopping at the park as well, which we talked about. So we signed a contract on that. So going into this year, We'll have the bathroom refreshed, the blacktop and bollards, which should be easily justifiable for our price increases and very visual. So it'll be pretty exciting going into this year about how it'll look.
Where are you blacktopping?
Everything. So a couple of years back, we did from the boat ramp
Right.
up to the office.
Right.
So we're doing everywhere else that currently has blacktop. But it's just
Does that include in front of the shelter? Is that?
no, that'll remain gravel. So it'll be both sides of the entrance, around the gatehouse coming in, and then the main road that goes back to our overflow parking and to the point there. But it is just atrocious now. So it'll be very nice to.
So of those claims, $6,740.88 was payroll related. Regular claims were $57,816.48 for a total of that $64,557.36. So could I have a motion to approve the January claims?
I will make a motion to approve the January claims.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, David.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Now we're on to the manager's report, and I think we're starting that off with Sarah Powers from the university to give us a water quality update.
Yes, thank you for coming, Sarah.
Yeah.
We're going to give the update for the 2025 water quality monitoring.
I need you to allow me to share my screen
All right.
to ensure that I share the right thing.
And then IU has been doing our testing since the inception of the Conservancy District, essentially. I think once we took over the Brittle Point Park around 2000, we were required to start testing. We do test weekly for bacteria around the park. And then actually, as of last year, we started testing for toxins, or blue-green algae toxins as well. So we have test strips that we test weekly, so we can actually go in there and have quicker data. Historically, we would send stuff off. So if you had, potential toxins present, we find out a week later and then notify. So we're trying to increase our expedience.
It's been a minute since I shared it. It's been a minute since I've shared my screen in Zoom, so that took a second. I've been using Teams more frequently recently. I'm not sure why. So sorry, I didn't quite hear all of the introduction you gave.
Just gonna give an introduction. You've been testing for us
Yes.
for a long time.
For a very long time. I've been at IU doing work at the lake since 2009, in some capacity. So been around for a while. And we've been doing the water quality monitoring since 1998
Oh, all right.
at the lake. Yeah, it's in the first paragraph of the water quality report. So I just have a summary of the results. There's a full report in the board packet for you. And here's our summary. So the sampling sites, the only thing that changed this past year in regards to our sampling sites, they're all the same ones that they have been. We've sampled at Brittle Point and Reed Point and at the beach, and then we have our tributary sites. The only change is that we're no longer doing anything at the overflow area because now it's a wetland, and I really enjoy driving past it and seeing how it's changing and progressing. The swans were over there the other day. It was like, there were a bunch. Then it got cold again, so everything's disappeared for a minute. Okay, so our sample schedule for the 2025, we did weekly beach samples for E. coli, and we're also doing strip testing for Slenderospermopsin at the beach each week. And that's just for a specific toxin that's indicative to a harmful algal bloom that we say a lot of Slenderospermopsis, which is or Raphidiopsis, attacks of algae, essentially. Simplify that a little bit. So we're testing for that harmful algal bloom toxin. And then in addition, we collected lake samples on June 17th, July 31st, and August 21st. And we did tributary sampling around the lake just to check for E. coli primarily on both June 4th and June 5th. And that was essentially because we knew we were going to get a heavy rainfall. So I ran out and collected all the stream sites real quick and then did it again in the morning so we could analyze those because we knew there would be a big rainfall. So this figure there just shows you precipitation is the blue line for different rain events and the times of each individual sampling event so that you can see those there. Okay, so seasonal changes are what we expect at Lake Lemon and what we see typically every year as the summer progresses, things warm up. You get an increase. So this is showing seasonal changes at Reed Point and then Riddle Point. And it has the total phosphorus concentration, so that being our primary nutrient that is feeding our algae. The chlorophyll A is an indicator of that algal biomass, how much is actually the productivity from the nutrients coming into the system. And as it gets warmer throughout the summer, just like as all the plants grow, the algae grow too, and we can see that. The threshold lines that you see on there, the green line and the orange line, indicate once it moves into being a highly productive system, or what we would call eutrophic, just being very productive. And as the summer goes on, it progresses into eutrophic conditions. So it's becoming more and more productive at both Reed and Riddle Point. Okay. Additional things that we see, so when we conducted the tributary samples for E. coli, we are looking at E. coli colonies that are counted is number per 100 milliliter. I feel like there's a typo. The state recreation standard is 235 colonies per 100 milliliters. I think my slash is in the wrong place. It's throwing me off at my dash line. But so when we sampled the tributaries, we sampled Bear Creek, Knob Creek, Shuffle Creek, Chitwood in the channel, and Bean Blossom. On June 4th, Bear Creek and Knob Creek already exceeded the threshold of 235 colonies per 100 milliliters of E. coli. There had been a little bit of rain in a week previous, but there had been at least a week with no rainfall. So those are just standard areas where we see some higher levels of E. coli, and we've known that in the past. Bear Creek hasn't typically been as problematic, but Knob Creek coming in has in the past. And then we see on the following day after the large rain event, many of the sites exceeding the 235, Possum Trot and Bean Blossom being the only two that didn't exceed. I would also note that Knob Creek, we truncated it so that you could see the data better. That was actually, I believe, 4,000 colonies. It was essentially too numerous to count. So precipitation did, in fact, drive up E. coli, which we typically expect to see.
And that's the trailer park going in near the marina.
That is the trailer park going into the marina. So it's a culvert I test on the opposite side of the road of the lake. So I sample directly from the culvert. The two streams kind of converge right there and go under the road, and I sample at that point. So that would probably be the area that over time has shown the highest values. And we've worked with or at least this has been communicated with the county.
Will you have an update on that status at some point?
Well, it'll kind of fall into a meeting that we had earlier with our Congresswoman of District 9. I'll mention that the trailer park did sell within the past year to a group. And I believe they are going in and installing multiple holding tanks for now for them to all hook up to. And then they can pump that out and bring that directly to the treatment facilities instead of those old septics and holding tanks flowing into the lake right there.
You believe they're doing that because you heard they're doing it?
Yes, I think
Told
The
you.
first thing they did was demolish most of the trailers or campers, they shut everything down along the Knob Creek. All but a couple that had good working septics. And so they're looking at options. One is to put, like 3 10,000-gallon tanks, bury them in the ground and pipe everything to them and then pump it out until the sewer comes through. So I know they made that promise to the health department that they would clean it up, and they are spending a lot of money. I mean, they closed probably 30 lots down.
How do they make money?
And
Well, it's been a problem for a long time.
well, he's looking at long-term, developing it,
Oh, okay.
making something out of it, so. It's going in the
So were
right
these,
direction.
these were, before they shut all these down, like when did they shut all these lots down? Were they?
It was a process all summer, all
Okay.
season long, so I forget
They
when
were
they
probably all
took
there.
over, but I wanna say it was probably early in the year. I mean, they're still tearing them down now. They still got some they're working on.
So they are moving that process, and that is something we've been going back and forth for years between the county health department and the state health department. Kind of having issues juggling around who was in charge of that and then trying to track down owners. So seeing some actual action there and plans, is very, very nice.
I mean, I'm confident it's in good hands. It's headed in the right direction.
Be interesting to see if those levels reduce then.
I just made a note so that I don't forget to add to explore that a little bit
Yeah,
more to see if we
sure.
don't see a change as a result. Because we have seen some in Chitwood over the past number of years, such that it hasn't been an area of as much concern as it was before. So it'd be nice to see some change in other areas as well.
And I think that, as we've talked about it over time, we kind of felt like we're asking the questions, but our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do. It's the health department that has to do it, right?
Yeah, ultimately.
I just want to be sure there's not something we as a
Yeah.
board should be doing because of this water quality.
We have contacted and wrote letters in the past and worked with both the inspectors from the state and the county. So it seems like we're as close as we've ever been as far as.
The previous owner, they were operating without a permit. The health department was gonna shut the whole place down.
Mhm.
So that's why the quick sale happened, and they've actually done enough to satisfy the health department to get a permit issued with promises. So I've been in discussion with them because,
Affects you.
they'll even allow us to pump over to them, if they put in enough capacity
Mhm.
and close our septic down.
Hmm.
Which is still, in good condition, but I'd hook up in the sewer in a heartbeat to free up that land that it's consuming.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, so E. coli beach results, we had 2 exceedances at the very beginning. I think the first one was also a really high one, which is why you see the asterisk there that we truncated the scale. But the beach wasn't actually open yet at that point. The orange dashed line across here shows the health and recreation standard of 235 colonies. So even during those storm events or those higher events, you can see on 6.4 and 6.5 that we are 6. I must have sampled the beach the same day that I sampled the tributaries. I did. So we have both of those states that the levels are already a little bit elevated because we had received rain a little bit earlier, maybe a week in advance, but they're still not, for the most part, exceeding state recreation standards, which means that even though we have a few high areas of tributaries coming into the lake, that it's diffuse enough by the time it moves through the lake that it's not creating a recordable problem.
Is there any explanation for the May? Was there an event then? I mean,
I would have to go back to the precipitation. I think I did look at that. I don't have on my finger the precipitation data, but I would assume that it is a rain event in advance. We have to sample for 2 weeks prior to the beach actually opening. So that's why we're sampling before it opens. And we sampled on the 20th and then again on the 22nd and then again on the 27th, trying to ensure that it was safe.
It's always either rain or the geese that don't leave right there. So once that people starting to come in to scare them out of the park, we don't have as many droppings along the water there.
The geese, we found, are a major factor. And also, yeah, primarily the geese and rain. So if in the event that we do get an exceedance, we come back and sample again the following day. And we continue to monitor until it is within compliance for any of those events.
Do you distinguish between human E. coli and
We do not.
animal?
That is a
So it could
different,
be the geese.
yes.
For what?
The geese.
Yeah, no, yeah, it definitely could be. I mean, I think a lot of it is the geese, and even the technology now to distinguish between the animals and human is subpar at best.
Well, there is some spray that you can apply to the lawn that, the grape spray that geese don't like.
No, really.
Really?
We use it at the marina.
How long does it last?
Till it
Well,
rains.
it depends on the rain. If
Till it
you get once
rains.
rain.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
But it's a grape spray. They don't like grape, the grape flavor. It's I don't know, it works.
Oh,
Does it make your lawn?
But over at the park, you could get the coyotes, like a real 3D coyote, and you gotta move them around. Cause I used them at our property, commercial property up in Indy.
Really?
We were getting a lot of activity, so we'd move them around, and the geese.
I think once my 12-year-old dog finally goes down, we're gonna get a big dumb dog that can run around the park and not bark at people. We had an increase in geese after we had a resident named Tim that lived on Tolman Road that had his dog out there every day in the morning, and we had no geese problems until he moved to the North Shore. So I think at some point we'll get a goose dog out there pretty soon. But the coyotes are gonna do.
So long-term status, so this is the trophic status for chlorophyll A. And this is just looking over the entire period that we've been conducting sampling at Lake Lemon since 1998. And it shows the chlorophyll A, the average chlorophyll A over time, the eutrophic score, where it becomes eutrophic. Like I mentioned earlier, eutrophic just means it's a highly productive system. A reservoir in southern Indiana with the watershed that Lake Lemon has is expected to be a highly productive ecosystem and lake. And then it shows the early summer and then the late summer, which we expect to be higher, is the orange dots. And what we see is while we still have a highly productive system, the goal is to maintain the lake as it is, and pretty much you're doing a good job of that. It's not getting worse. It's actually becoming a little more stable, I guess, and consistent, but we'll see over time if the dredging hasn't caused any major shifts, but so far we haven't seen any.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you, did the
Yeah.
dredging help keep it stable?
We have potentially, you'll notice there's a little less variation, like back in the earlier 2000s and through 2012, there, even in 18. And it really depends on that specific year, the amount of precipitation. As some were saying earlier, that it was colder later, there was more precipitation in the earlier part of the year, which then leads to less productivity, right? If there's more turbidity and suspended sediment, there's less light getting into the water, which is making less algae grow. So it's going to reduce that productivity a little bit. But overall, it's not changing substantially over time, which is a good thing. Then the Slendrospermopsin results, we did toxin testing at the beach weekly when we conducted our E. coli sampling, and all of them, the first one was below detection limit and the rest were under 10 nanograms per liter. 15 nanograms per liter is when the state of Indiana and the EPA recommend that you put out an advisory. This is a simple toxin strip test that we conduct whenever we go out to the beach, just to ensure that we're operating recreationally safe space. Okay, so future recommendations, things based on our findings this year, bacteria recommendations, obviously, in order for the beach to be open, you have to continue to monitor the beach, but we do encourage to continue monitoring the stream sites around the lake just to see where there's potential concerns and target areas. In the event that there are other areas that the board or the manager would like to target, they can let us know and we can add those on or change or modify those stream sites. And I will, I've already, as I said, made note to look at Knob Creek a little bit more this year, just because to see what impact that had. And then for the HAB monitoring, obviously continuing with the lake monitoring, in-lake monitoring, but then with the HAB monitoring, we do recommend to continue with the Slendospermopsin test strips. In the past, we sent out for full algal identification for blooms to get an actual biomass count. And while that is beneficial for knowledge, it doesn't really answer the question, you can have a bloom and have no toxins. You can also have toxins and not have a bloom.
And not know for a week until we get samples.
Right, and not know until you get samples back. So it's important to understand that new research is finding that algal blooms, when there's a lot of algae there, that doesn't necessarily mean the algae is going to produce toxins. But sometimes they're finding that earlier in the season when it's cooler and there's less dominance of actual algae in the water, that they produce toxins.
That's kind of a new finding, huh?
Yeah, it's newer. It has to do, they believe, to my understanding, with the nutrient ratios and other factors that drive them algae to produce toxins. It's still not fully understood what causes toxin production. So that's why we want to continue to monitor the beach weekly from the time that anybody will be recreating early in the season to ensure that there's not toxin production. The other thing to consider would be adding additional toxins to the test. Right now, we test for Slendospermopsin because it is the most likely toxin based on the taxa of algae that we see in the lake. But those same algae can produce other toxins, including another toxin called anatoxin and microcystin. So there are other toxins and they make a simple test kit for those other toxins. So we'll leave that to the discretion of you guys.
It's not that pricey. I would say a test strip kit is like $1,000.
$1,000 that covered the entire summer.
So we can definitely add that in. I think it's very beneficial for the health and kitchen. So if you let me know.
Yeah,
I can do that.
The Conservancy bought the kits last year because it wasn't worked into our initial budget. So the kits are being purchased by the Conservancy. So you can add on as many as you need to. It's fairly simple for our staff to do that analysis whenever they collect the beach sample.
Does Lake Monroe sample all those toxins?
So Lake Monroe does sample for all the toxin, but they're doing a different type of testing because the IDEM, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, as part of their beach monitoring program that operates at public DNR beaches. They go out and sample them, I believe, weekly or bi-weekly throughout the summer. So they measure them through a different method of analysis. Our test strips give us a indicator whether it's below detection, detectable, or high. And then if it's high, then we would actually need to send it out to a contract lab to get the actual value. But they're doing a little bit different test, but they measure for all the toxins, yes.
And that was that $1,000 like per additional toxin or?
Per toxin, and that included, I believe the kit we purchased last year was roughly $1,000, and it had 10 tests in it, which is enough, 10 or 20, I can't recall.
It was enough to take a season and a half.
It was enough for the entire season. The only way that it wouldn't, and the kit's good for 1 year. So essentially, they do expire. So in the event, the only place where I foresee it being problematic is in the event that we get a high result and we would want to do additional tests to follow, then we might not have enough to last the entire season in one box.
And we can order more. It's definitely worthwhile to know. But what we can do is go back and look at the plankton assemblage, right? And select like the top 3 most likely toxin.
Based on the phycologist who was doing the algal analysis before she passed away, her recommendations based on the taxa present was cylindrospermopsin and anatoxin as the top two that she would pick. And then in the event that you had space to add another, she said microcystin.
Does the state require us to do this?
The state does not require it.
Really?
They do not.
I'm surprised.
Drinking water treatment facilities are required to test for it, because if it's coming in your drinking water, you have to treat it or remove it or shut down your plant.
And that's why we do have signage at the launch ramp, at the marina now, and on the beach where we have movable arrows as far as the recreation. I hate that term. The safety recreation level as far as like what we're seeing in there. So if we start getting higher amounts of E. coli or toxins, we can move those in like yellow and red areas. So we do. Then historically we have sent out like social media letters as well. If we've reached, I think 2 years ago, we had to close down the beach for a week from E. coli. Thankfully, we haven't had to do that recently.
So I think we need to do it as a
Can I make a comment?
responsibility for water quality, but I'm unclear about the dollar amount.
So it seems like it'd go from about $1,000 to potentially $3,000 to cover all of those 3 toxins for the year.
So 3,000. What line item do we have that budgeted under?
We put that under the water quality, water testing line item.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's a pretty low bar to have that information available to the public, so I'll go ahead and.
Well,
I think it'd be good to maybe just, I mean, I think it's good for a year to establish a baseline. If we're showing below detectable for an entire year, I think we could readdress it. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
like,
No,
it'd be nice to get a baseline of where we're at, but if we test for a year and we've been below detectable, then maybe we don't need to spend that money.
and I do think, I mean, they do have smaller kits as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't, do we know what time of year those toxins would be most prevalent? I mean, is it?
summer is the likely peak, and a lot of areas do test regularly because
We
it's
just
the
talked
top.
about the colder water, like we talked about the early season, potentially more
Yeah.
toxins, so I didn't know if
Yeah,
it was
so
the same
it-
comment.
Right.
And before that, we weren't testing for toxins regularly at the
Yeah.
beach, so we don't know. But I will say that the algal counts in the open water particle weight, when we sampled at the peak of the growing season, were 3 times what the state would put out an advisory for recreation. So we were seeing like 300,000 cells per milliliter of algae, of algal cells. And I don't have,
So was that in your summary here? Did we? I'm having a hard time
have cells,
keeping up with your lingo, actually.
you know, I now that
I know you're trying to dumb it down for us, but
so harmful algal bloom cells per milliliter at Riddle and Reed Point during the July sampling event were over 300,000 cells per milliliter of algal taxa that you would consider that have the potential to produce toxins. The state level at which they send out an advisory and sample for toxins is at 100,000 cells per milliliter. So we're far exceeding that threshold of when they would recommend that they sample for toxins and put out an advisory for recreation.
But we are sampling for the toxins.
We're sampling weekly for the toxins because
That's what our little needle thing's for.
Right. it is,
Is that for the algae based on?
Yeah, that's kind of just like that overall recreation
so
level, so that would be a whole lot.
I will say toxin testing is far cheaper than the plankton samples. So the toxin is what we're concerned about. So monitoring cheaply for the toxin versus sending out algal samples that cost upwards of just under $200 a sample, that's why we're recommending going that route, I guess.
And then it really ties back into like our usage, like when we got like into the voting restrictions in areas with depths. Because when we have activities that disturb the substrate in the lake, there's a lot of nutrients that are attached to that sediment. So when those get stirred up, you have increased amount of the different nutrients that go in and feed those algae blooms. So it's like when we kind of talked about having to look at that from a holistic standpoint about potential, not just from erosion, that kind of thing. What you do have is reintroduction of stored nutrients in the sediment when those get stirred up, which kind of add to that overall plankton biomass.
So we had the kind of the biomass concentration, but did we do toxin out in open water?
We didn't do the strip test in the open water because we had just enough in the kit to do the beach, which
Seems like that'd be a relevant data point to know what if we know it's there, but is the potential fulfilling its potential? So, maybe some open water toxin this year would be a good idea. I think it'd be worth knowing since we're the ones out there swimming in recreating.
Right.
And we
Not
haven't
just
that.
It's not just the
Not the
goers.
beach, right.
Yeah.
we have found in the past that the numbers at the beach tend to be pretty similar, reflective of what we get in the open water of the lake. There are differences. There's differences at Reed and Riddle too,
Sure.
because as you move through the reservoir, things change.
Yeah, but if we were able to allocate the strips to maybe just get a couple.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we have more than we can use in the season, so we can even add staffer. Yeah, we
Even if there's just a couple, when we feel like we're at a higher point, let's just get that out there and.
And if need be, we can miss a few weeks at the beach and get the open water.
Yeah.
At the same time.
I don't think I'd miss it at the beach.
Sounds like we don't need.
Yeah, we can add in the open water
Just
testing, absolutely.
Any other questions for me?
For that to be a unilateral decision, I was just checking. Is everybody okay with that idea?
It's good information to have for
Yeah.
pretty low cost.
I think we're fulfilling our responsibilities by doing that.
Yeah, and then it was awesome going to the test strip, so we can be so much more proactive as far as getting that information out there. Well, thank you very much, Sarah.
Did we have any questions from the board first? Any additional?
I know.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the board first and then I had seen you, so I was gonna check back to you in just a second. Any additional board questions for Sarah?
Good.
Are we okay? Yeah, happy to go, Chips.
Yeah, I'm just an observation. I've always been concerned about the water in Indiana. It's depressing to read. You have to, can only eat so many fish and blah, blah, blah. And especially Lake Lemon. And I got a spring on my property that flows out of the north. And if it runs year round, even when it's freezing from the spring on down to the lake, it runs into the lake year round. And I had that water tested a year or so ago over at Columbus, and it's not potable. I was surprised because I thought that spring would cleanse itself, but it's not drinkable or anything. And that's just one instance. And I just wondered if there was any program to check the immediate effect from people's septic systems immediately to the lake.
Well, I think the E. coli levels would be the analog representative. So when we see the fluctuations in E. coli levels, we can infer that a lot of that is coming from the septic. So that would be kind of what we would
Only if you see something wrong or something.
Yeah, so we do test at the multiple points, but major issues will be reflected in those levels of E. coli and bacteria.
There has been conversation.
Population constantly increases around that lake.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were really old, and I just wondered if there was if anybody ever checked them up. Or I know you have a limited.
Yeah, no, we do the testing
limited
there.
Staff.
And then that also kind of goes back to, we have Steve here who serves on the regional sewer district.
Yes.
Correct. And we've been working for a little bit, for the past 5 years or so about trying to get sewers run on the eastern portion of Lake Lemon and then ultimately on the North Shore and South Shore. We had a meeting today with Congresswoman Erin
Okay.
Erin Hogan came down and actually just received $3.7 million from federal funding to do the preliminary engineering reports for the Lake Lemon specific sewer district run along the North Shore and South Shore. On North Shore, about to Oak Avenue, and on South Shore.
Yeah, Gray Avenue and Oak.
Gray Avenue. So just west of the marina.
Right.
And would include that Lake Lemon Acres,
Yeah,
it's called
trailer
now,
park.
and then essentially into the causeway on the south side on the eastern portion. So those monies have been allocated for the engineering studies on that. So that's actually real money hidden in the ground, and that's pretty awesome.
It's just engineering studies, and you're gonna have to have the money to get something else in. I just wanna make it clear, you kind of make it sound like we got that money. There's no money come to the LLCD.
Nobody's come to us. No, that was through the regional sewer district.
But I think you started to say, back to your question.
Yeah, to your question about the sewer, or to the septics, is that I mean, over the last couple of years, a few times it's come up, where is it Caudry and
Gorgeous
Sweetwater, they do alternating, I guess, alternating septic tests that are required by the different homes on the lake. So every couple of years, you're required to do a dye test, I believe. And we've entertained that, and I can't, I mean, it's a
think that-
cost thing and a bit of I don't know, it was.
So it's always
We've
come up
had
for
presentations
discussion.
about septics too, and we know it's an issue, and it's kind of been a thing that I've really been onto. And for whatever reason, I think it was the consensus of the board. I mean, I think we hit everybody with the sediment mitigation, this, that, and the other, and I just think it was like, let's pick our battles. That's where I think it ended up. I don't think there was a real, I don't know what your recollection is.
State rules that kind of hindered doing that.
Yeah, Indiana is very not pro restrictions on private property, and even more so now. So there are limits as far as what we can do to force somebody. We can't go in and say, you have to test your septic. We're going to fine you if there's an issue. What we can do, and it'd have to be something where we have to come from the opposite direction and say, if you would like to buy annual passes on the lake or utilize our shoreline for a dock, you would have to provide proof that your septic is functioning every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So we can use what we provide to the public as a benefit and say, we're only going to give you this benefit if you provide us this data, but nor can the county health departments go and mandate septic testing in these areas.
But evidently, there's no evidence that it's really a problem because it's only occasionally in the fall, let's say when the E. coli blooms because it's been flushed down the rivers.
And I think that's where the whole question came in. Is it coming from the animals or is it coming from these failing
We could find that out if we had a.
But
And-
the
and-
guys that presented it said, you know, they don't last that long. And I want to say, I was looking for your recommendations because I feel like at some point in one of your reports that, you know, you did suggest we, you know, ramp up the education of people about their septic systems, about leaves going to the lake. I mean, there was kind of other educational points that you felt like we could or should do with our freeholders, which I think would be a minimum. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, but I think doing some educational programs with them would be a great benefit or way to, a lot of times people don't know, or don't realize how much their actions or lack of action is impacting others, right? Or has the potential to make a child sick when they're out swimming in the lake. I don't think anybody wants to make someone sick. So, ramping up those education programs first is a good first step, before mandating.
Did you say
The leaves.
that leaves are an issue?
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought,
Leaves are, blowing your leaves in the lake is
Well,
basically
yeah, okay, intentional blowing,
Yeah,
I mean, but
fertilizing your lawn.
fertilizing your lawn, blowing grass clippings in the lake, all of those things just feed.
we've got that one creek that comes from that sycamore protected land. We live on North Shore, off of Wildwood, and I mean, if there's a big rain event, it is just pouring down there,
Well, we have, I guess the president now of Indiana Lakes Management Society, Christie, is in charge of the DNR Conservancy District section. So we're gonna make a note and we can reach out to her and see if we could have DNR and Elms team up and come out and do an educational thing at the shelter house. It'd be good for all organizations.
Well, we could do that at the annual meeting, but we could also just try to put something out on,
In
to
the
the
newsletters,
freeholders. Like,
yeah.
I do think we need to at least do that as a minimum.
You know,
If you haven't had your septic tested, you test it,
I think,
Yeah.
to your point about you gotta come at it from the other direction, we could, you'd have to show us every 4 years to get your pass. We can let people know that they should do it, people aren't gonna do it. I think that if we were really serious about it, I think you could incentivize it. So, if you do get your septic tested, when you come to get your permit, your permit is $20 less that year, or some sort of incentive there, which if we just tell people, because you don't want to know the answer. Like, I mean, you have it tested and nobody wants to know the answer, because then,
it's gonna be a lot of money.
yeah. And if you can just be blissfully ignorant, you have plausible deniability and you just whatever. But if you make it incentivize that, like, okay, hey, I could get some money off on my permits by proving that my septic is in good working order, you might get a little bit more movement. Cause I think most people do know, the problem is that, like, if I find out my septic's not great, I'm gonna do something. Do I want to test it right now?
Right.
Not really, cause I'm being honest, like, it's just the reality of it.
Properties where somebody added onto their house, and built right over their septic.
Yeah.
So you can knock half
But anyway.
your house down
I agree that the education, but I don't know that we get that far with it.
Well, it would help anyway.
Yeah, it would.
I mean, it's something.
It's
Yeah.
I mean, could
it's
they,
cheaper than something.
you force them to go on a holding tank or something like that, maybe?
No, we can't.
Well, we could.
well, we could.
Monroe and Maggie, Friends of Lake Monroe, as well as the Monroe Waterfront, they got some funding and they actually were able to do a grant program where they were giving people money to, partial cost to get their septic tanks pumped and things of that nature as well. So we can explore where there might be some additional options that would incentivize and could even potentially be incentives for those with the Bean Blossom Watershed Management Plan now done. It might be a way to work up and team with others to do some things in the watershed that are impacting the lake. So,
It might be an angle for grant money to do something like that, to have a program in place where we receive grant money to issue grants
Right.
to freeholders.
So I think we'll reach out to both of those groups and find out where and how they made that work.
Yeah.
I'm in touch with Maggie regularly so that we can.
Then you kind of
And we haven't
make
seen,
that and report back.
yeah, and we haven't seen increased property transfers as well. And Monroe County has really stepped up, requiring septic approval and systems on file during property transfers. So that definitely helps out as well.
Well, I don't want to belabor it, but I think another issue with the Quarter Street water was, I feel like they had some sort of board, like a committee, didn't they? Like, refresh my memory, and then people would have to like submit their like proof of, working septic things to that. And I think that was another big issue, like, how do you hold these people accountable? What really can you do?
But yeah, and they're a little bit different. as well because they're a conservancy district and they include wastewater in their formation of a conservancy district and they own the property, which is a big thing. But yeah, I think they required once every 5 years. Although Les and myself went out and met with the people that run that last summer, and I did learn that they can just have any of these septic pumpers sign off. It's a form, and when you have Joe Blow Septic come and sign off, they just like, all right, this appears to be working. So they were not requiring dye testing or anything substantial.
They're even encouraging people to have their tanks pumped at least annually or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, just some basic things.
So we can definitely at least initially reach out if potential funding's there and then increase our educational articles and the newsletter to include in there because there is a plethora of stuff from state level and around that we can include for education.
Good. Thank you for coming and presenting and answering the questions. Keep going with your report though.
All right, next up, we have 2 sublease items. They are, both are a little bit different. The first is a Joshua Pugh. He is in District 3 in Brett's district. They are seeking to add a sublease along the causeway, the short causeway near the district. They currently do not have a docking area there. I've talked with Brett and talked with the owners in that area. I do not have an issue with that.
There's already several there. It's within walking distance.
But since it's not a priority one, meaning adjacent to the house, it does have to come through approval of the board since we created that resolution. So I guess I would like to seek a motion to approve the Joshua from District 3 for the sublease on the.
Does everybody understand what we're talking about there? Previously, we've had them up on the map and everything, but it's when you get to the T, you go left, it'll just be along where further down the short causeway, going towards Riddle Point on the right-hand side there. There's already a few docks there that are fairly run down that we mentioned, but it's not a new area. There's probably 4 or 5 docks there already.
And they're all subleased currently.
Yes.
And there's parking, right? I mean,
It's,
a place to park.
there's not parking there, but it's walking
Yeah,
distance.
it's not a problem, so I mean.
Yeah.
Yes, parking's not an issue. And it's, I mean, it's mainly part of resale for the home. He's trying to sell the house and it's gonna add property value and make it more.
Motion approved.
I will second that.
All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, the next one that we have, and I do have a map from this one since we had it via resolution. So this is the eastern end of the long causeway in Brown County. It was resolution 24, so September 2024. We approved a dock to be placed, a sublease dock on that eastern end of the long causeway. We contacted the county highway departments to make sure that that was feasible. Their biggest thing was making sure there's zero parking there, zero pull off. So it was approved at that time for a property owned by Teresa Sims, since they're right there on Snug Harbor and they can walk right to the area. I've since been approached by the next home over. It's a new property owner, which is at Middle Star. And additionally, I've talked with that Third Star back. So the resolution that we has authorizes them to place a sublease, or currently for the one property to place a sublease. It sets timing limitations where they have to have the dock out, I believe it's in November, and then they can't put it in until almost end of April to allow us to do debris removal in that area, since it's an area that captures it and we did not want to add additional items in the way when we're trying to do debris removal. So what this resolution would do is it's amending that original resolution. It keeps all the timing restrictions in place and the parking restrictions. But what it would do would be to extend that authorization to the 3 homes on Snug Harbor. And the reason being is they do not need parking. They're in walking distance. There's no car pull off. So there's no risk of congestion via vehicles on the causeway in that area. This is in Brown County, but I wanted to do it by resolution. Just that way we are limiting it in this area to those potential 3 homes that do not have those conflicts. I really do not even want to entertain and would not entertain, say somebody in a different district or area that would not be able to walk directly to that area since there is 0 parking on an already narrow causeway. So I don't know if there's any
Discussion on that,
any more discussion on that.
questions?
Yeah, Adam, you said that they have to take their docks out completely?
Yes, so on an annual basis, they must remove the dock not later than December 1st and install/reinstall the dock no earlier than May 15th. So that would require to get taken out before the winter time and when we have our spring rains and debris coming in. And then they could not place the dock back until May 15th, which by then we've generally done our debris removal at large in that area.
Well, even all the homes on Salmon Harbor, all their docks have to come out and stay out because that area captures a ton of debris.
That just seems like a lot of work, but yeah, sure. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, that's on the homeowners to accomplish that. But that I like amending the resolution so we can codify those restrictions so our operations can move smoothly.
Yeah.
So there's no discussion. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve amended resolution 0924-02 to authorize the 3 parcels stated in the resolution on Snug Harbor to place sublease docks on the causeway.
I will make that motion as long as I don't have to repeat what you just said.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have the 2025 annual report. Sure. Sure what PDF this is. Excuse me. All right, 2025 annual report. There is a PDF version that encompasses a lot of the same information, but it's a lot of text. So we like to do a PowerPoint presentation as well for the general public. This kind of looks at operations, finances, just kind of the general actions of the district for 2025. For some of the highlights in 2025, and I will get into more of these in detail as we come to the slides. We did have our final surveys for the wetland area and confirm over 141,000 yards of sediment placed into that 17-acre emergent wetland. As part of that dredging project, we were able to place that sediment, and for our mitigation for dredging, we received a 1-to-1 mitigation ratio, which meant that we can utilize that 17-acre site. We can turn that into a wetland, and we do not have to go above and beyond. A lot of projects like this require a 2 or a 3-to-1. So that was pretty great that we're able to get that passed. It's quite a bit of work to get that there. If you cannot mitigate in the state of Indiana, you have to pay into an in lieu fee program, and that's generally about $90,000 per acre. So if we were not able to get that 1-to-1 mitigation, we had to pay $90,000 plus an acre for each of those 17 acres. So that was a huge win there. 100% beneficial reuse of the sediment. Another highlight is our special benefits tax reduced 15.4% from 24 to 25, and then the overall tax rate reduced 14.3%. And that's inclusive of our special benefits tax and our continuous conservancy improvement tax, which is a set rate. What we do is we ask for our money and then they back into that rate based on the assessed values. Our 2025 revenue exceeded budget, as Debbie had mentioned earlier, by about $30,000. And our general fund expenses were under budget by 26.33%. That's primarily because we had our entire wetland project in the initial budget. However, only a portion of that took place in 2025, and the remainder of that budget will continue through the next 4 years, I believe, as far as monitoring and our maintenance of that. Park admissions, we increased almost 10% year over year. And we've had continued diversification on our non-tax revenue sources. So we've had more events coming in, both that we were doing and people that are utilizing the park. And then really, just continuing our ongoing water quality monitoring and lake safety presence. So board of directors in 2025, we had 2 positions that were filled. Dave Carrico ran unopposed to a 4-year term in sub-area 1, and then Stephen Warner won an election in sub-area 4. Both were elected to a 4-year term. The board officers for 2025 were Les Wadzinski as chairman, Brett Huber as vice chairman, and Deborah Ladyman as treasurer. For our 2025 staff and seasonal team, we had Ross Carlson for about half the year in operations supervisor and Lily Shunn for administrative assistant. Lily had been with us for close to 5 years from the gatehouse and then to admin, and then Ross had been with us for 3 years. Gatehouse attendants, Caleb Chin, Timothy, Aiden, and Avery. We usually shoot for 4 gatehouse attendants, and we're actually in the process now of hiring for the summer. So it's on Indeed, and we've been working with the Boy Scouts and a couple other organizations to find seasonal help. For our park patrol, we had Harlan Bierman and Logan Markham. We'd just like to thank them. They played a critical role in maintaining our level of service, interacting with the public, and just keeping our operations safe and ongoing. And especially with the loss of an employee in August, everybody really had to step up to the table, which we did exceptionally. For our gatehouse operations, the gatehouse opened up on April 1st and then was open through October 19th. Now we are collecting fees outside that. However, we're mostly running that out of the office prior to the gatehouse and after, because at that point it's just fishermen and people utilizing the boat ramp, and we're right there. So it's hard to justify keeping somebody in that outer season at the gatehouse. Myrtle Point Park itself opened up on Friday, May 22nd, which was the weekend before Memorial Day, and then remained open until September 7th, which is essentially a Labor Day weekend. Sometimes we'll extend that depending on weather. With staffing, we were ready to shut down. But that being said, we had a record year for park admissions and our revenues. Total park admissions was $91,016. That includes our daily and our annual park passes. And then our watercraft permit revenue for all watercraft types was $145,585. And that was up about 2.6% year over year.
Hey, I think something we need to keep in mind on the park admission, a lot of that was due to Monroe being flooded all season, so it may drop,
Steal my words out of my mouth, Steve.
Well,
Yeah. So one of the reasons that we saw such an elevated level was, we mentioned earlier, it did not stop raining until it seemed like July. And Lake Monroe was at flood levels with all their beaches inundated clear through Labor Day. And I think they opened up for one weekend, and then they had high algae levels, so they're closed from blue-green algae. So they essentially did not open. So we caught a lot of that overflow as far as people coming to the park. However, a lot of people had never heard of Lake Lemon. They hadn't been out to the park. Everybody that came out loved it, loved the atmosphere, liked the park. So I think we will retain quite a bit of those people coming to Lake Lemon. from Monroe, and then also with our improvements coming on, I think it'll be a really good year as far as retaining
Yeah,
the Republic.
in the like Bloomington social media, there was quite a bit of talk about Riddle Point and Lake Lemon, and so it did get quite a bit of publicity, and most of it was all positive on, you know, hey, if you can't go there, go up to Riddle Point. So
Yeah, I was on the social media though, somebody said there's a salmonella outbreak, so I don't know if there's a Tyson chicken truck that flipped over somewhere.
Yeah.
That was the only negative thing I saw.
yeah, can't win them all.
No. Looking at our year-over-year park trends for sales, since 2019, 2020 was COVID, all the pools shut down, so we saw a record year with people coming with all the county pools closed down. However, since 2021, we have seen a steady increase or trending upwards with our daily park sales. And if you look at 2021 to 2025, that's almost 1,000 people more that came through on daily sales for the year. Our annual park passes kind of peaked in 2023 and have tapered down. We're not increasing the rate. The 2024 was the first time that we raised that, I believe, from it's like $70 to $80. We did see a little bit of a decrease there. So hopefully this year, with keeping our annual passes the same rate and with the improvements, we can see that number come back up. That being said, the total park sales or annual passes were 99 for the year average, and we were, you know, just under 90. So that being said, the annual park does not make up a bulk of our passes. The bulk is from our daily sales. Year over year boat sales. And so we have been seeing a steady decrease in the daily boat pass sales. So this is primarily non-residents, people coming through the park at the boat ramp. And this is something that we kind of have been discussing anecdotally. So Chris actually ran through the numbers on this and we're able to get the trending. So we are seeing that trending down. On this graph right here, that's close to 1,000 daily boat sales throughout the entire year between 2019 and 2025. Now that really is because our cost for a daily pass is equal to an annual pass going to Lake Monroe. However, the people that come to Lake Lemon seem to love it for the tranquility, not as busy. The fishery is great. So I think we do have people that come really enjoy it. When we look at the annual passes, those have actually trended upwards though. So we are seeing the people that are purchasing the annual passes still coming to the lake, assuming they're receiving that benefit. What we did actually add into our database for this year is looking at primary watercraft utilization for the non-resident and resident annual boats. So looking if that's anglers, if that's primary pleasure boaters, or if that's tow power sports. So what we really want to see is kind of what's driving that non-resident annual pass sales to increase slightly and not decrease. So Chris actually here has a big background in fisheries. So anecdotally, I think a lot of our non-resident fishermen that come through the park or boaters are fishermen. I think it's a very large percentage. So what we do want to look at is kind of getting back towards a fishery management plan moving forward and seeing how we can retain these people, you know, increase our bass size for the tournaments and just really keep that aspect going of the lake because that does seem to retain a lot of our non-resident annual boaters. So we'll be gathering that data.
But fishery management, you mean like stocking the lake?
You don't talk on this?
No, with a lake like Lake Lemon, it'd really be things like habitat restoration, management, like from the vegetation removals, for example, that's gonna cause a lot of like stunting and issues with the fish. So it'd really be things like artificial structures that you can strategically place that'll give the fish like a ideal spawning habitat, or the bass like ideal ambushing habitat, things like that. But stocking with a lake that size, you're you'd be dumping millions of dollars into it, so it's not, yeah, nothing like that. But mostly habitat.
So you generally think that fishermen are not thinking that the fishing is so great out there anymore?
I don't think it's bad.
I mean,
It's not bad, but I've heard a lot that, and I've seen it in the data, that the lake's just losing a lot of the really big bass, and that's mostly like fishing recreationally. It's almost all largemouth bass. I've seen it in the data and anecdotally even before working here. Just over the years, people say like Cleveland, and that used to be the land of the giants, but now getting a 5-pound bass is like
Right.
makes your year. So it's just it's a combination of the anecdotal info that we've gotten and looking at the data. I think there's things that the fishery's good and it's healthy and it's sustainable, but that's not exactly the same as like a trophy fishery that's going to attract anglers. So it's more of like a refinement and optimization type of thing than a fishery needs managed, if that makes sense.
well, I guess the thing you just have to evaluate the cost and the benefit, because we have fishermen fishing all around our docks all the time, I mean, so I'm just like,
Yeah.
what kind of more revenue is that gonna bring?
What is the life cycle of a bass? I don't know anything about fish, to be honest. So they grow big in a year, or does it take like 10 years, or what happens?
They're generally going to grow about a pound a year.
And how many years do they live then?
If you're lucky, they can live like 8 to 12 years. Sometimes they can, obviously there's 20+ pound bass in the world, so they can probably live up to 20 years. But in general, it's those like 3 to 7 year bass that's the like trophy size range. So there's a lot that goes. We could spend hours talking about it. There's a lot that goes into it, but
And so on to that, with the cost side of the management, one of the things that we actually looked at was reaching out to the local Boy Scout troops to have Eagle Scout projects, raise money, and build these type of structures. And then we've also been in contact with Army Corps of Engineers to get pre-authorized for some small scale structures that are out there. And then also looking at our vegetation treatment, like in coves where there's no homes or docking, or it's not impacting boating in the shallow areas, to make sure there are like breeding habitats, that type of stuff. So yes, I agree, not
There
spending
have
a
been
lot of money
years
on that.
where, and I know I've contacted you about it, where there's just like dead fish floating on the lake, what's the deal? What's the problem, So kind of it's a natural fish kill off or whatever, but.
Yeah. So looking at low cost ways to potentially drive up that and retain, and that's one thing that I'm really interested to see is kind of what percentage of our non-resident, how are they utilizing the lake? Is it tow sports? Is it just pleasure boaters? Or is it primarily fishing? So I think that data will really help us kind of retain and drive a little bit of that.
But if you look at that daily, you're like, honestly, like 22, 23, 24, all pretty much in line. How many did we lose from 25?
Not a whole lot. I mean, looking at that, you're under 200. So it really did from that 22 on. That's a good point.
You really have.
As
to
we
look
have
at
stayed
that.
pretty
The
steady.
pandemic is just.
Yeah, and now everybody bought a boat during the
Right.
pandemic, and they've been selling off. So that's a very good point. That 22 to 25 really has stabilized. So we definitely want to maintain that. For the gatehouse operations, this is for some of the just above and beyond the daily passes and park sales. We did have our 3rd annual polar plunge, the 2nd Brittle Point Boogie. We had a triathlon at the park, a Hollerman triathlon. We rented the shelter house 24 times and then rented the actual point twice. So we are seeing a big increase in the shelter rental, and then people becoming interested in actually renting out the point. We have to keep the beach open when we're in the season, but we do offer to get the point area for events. And we've already had some people reach out regarding events this year. We held 18 fishing tournaments in 2025. And then for our Independence Day fireworks, between the day of and then our mail-in donations, we actually made $18,000. And I believe that fireworks show was 10.5, right around there. It is the 250th celebration of the United States of America as well. So if we decide that we'd like to take some more of the potential revenue and put it into shells to celebrate on the lake, I would promote that.
I know you would. You got us going up from 8,000 a few years ago just because it's your birthday, you know.
It helps out.
But I think other events around the 250 would make sense. I mean, I think we have a great fireworks show and it's all.
Yeah. And we've talked about doing like a standalone kind of picnic area and some other community.
Yeah, I mean-
The big question is, are we gonna be able to get the 4th again? That's a
Yes.
Saturday.
I
We are.
believe I've secured that.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Have to get on early with that before all the county and other areas get in. But yeah, I've been in contact with the company already
Good deal.
for the 4th, so we should be able to secure that. Here's some pictures from the 3rd annual polar plunge. This was a very interesting and very Arctic polar plunge. We had to start about a week and a half before the event and break ice the entire time, make sure that we had enough open water. Then even the morning of, myself and Ross were there and waiters breaking ice from like 6 a.m. until the event started. So I believe the water temperature was like 36 degrees and the air temperature was upper 20s.
Yeah, it messed with your head. You got in there and you were warmer in the water for a second and you were like, yeah, it was rough. It was a rough one.
And we have had Brett and Les have done all of our
I'm glad you guys
polar
did it.
plunges. And I think with this one, we have close to 100 people.
Like walkway. I mean, it's nothing.
This is the Luke polar plunge. I think it was like 40 something degrees out.
I got sunburned.
No, so, so it was not bad at all this year. I don't know if this video will play.
It's going.
There's no audio going, but yeah, so I believe we had just under 100 people that year that kind of entered this. So it's been picking up steam. We've been keeping people and bringing new people in. We always have new garb that we create for it. So we're hoping here in 4 or 5 years, Brett will be showing up in the full Lake Lemon gear. And we also still have scarves and socks remaining. So if you'd like to purchase those, you can drop by the office. We also had the second Brittle Point Boogie. That was a blast. We had close to 350 attendees outside of staff and vendors that came to that. Music was great. The weather turned out beautiful. It's just so fun seeing the park utilized for that. This year, right now we're on an every other year schedule because we had the eclipse. With new staff coming on and training, we're at least not going to be looking at this in the springtime. That being said, I've been working with a couple other business owners in town about the potential of doing like a summer series, like a kind of a smaller production, less staff intensive, and getting a committee of people in the music industry around the lake. One of my goals is to promote utilization of the park for events that are ran by other organizations.
Yeah.
Because then it's revenue without taking up so much of our time. So currently I'm working, with the owner of the Orbit Room who does a lot of stuff around here. So we're going to hope to have some music out there, whether if it's not even just a huge event. And then we had the Hollerman Triathlon, and that will be happening again this year. So that's pretty cool to see the people come out. And we had the sheriff, the roads blocked off, the course on the road bike, I believe was like 20 miles. So it's pretty fun to see that being used. With the conservation officers, we had 32 cases, 25 tickets, and 23 warnings. That was actually down from 2024. Last November, I believe it was, the conservation officers have placed their boat lift and dock and everything behind the office, and they have purchased their boat. So we will have a conservation officer presence on the lake continuously, and they will be keeping the vessel out there and are fully staffed. So we should see them out quite a bit more this year, which will be nice to have their help out there. Aquatic plant management, we treated a total of 54 acres for Eurasian water milfoil, which is an invasive species, mixed submersed, and then emergent, which is primarily lotus, and then spatterdock. a total cost of $30,000. This map does show all the areas that were treated. This is the GPS from their final track on their airboat, so I couldn't get that off the map, but so that's what those lines are there. And again, very low year for that. The Monroe County Community Foundation, our 2025 beginning balance was just under $120,000. The ending balance was $136,700. The Brown County Community Foundation went from $50,000 to about $55,000. We have closed that out and received a grant money for those funds, and we'll be discussing on how we're going to utilize those funds as we move forward. But that has been closed out, so now we do have just the one community foundation for the Lake Limit Enhancement Fund. With our 2024-25 comparisons for revenue, and some of this was touched when we were going over financials, actual revenue was 107.5% of our budgeted amount. So we did bring in more revenue than we had budgeted. Our revenue or the expenses were under budget by 26%. That was primarily due to the wetland, and that funding will be coming in the future over those years. For our tax revenue comparison, the special benefits tax went up 1.1%. As far as what we actually brought in, we asked for $850,000, so we generally get right around that. The cumulative conservancy tax is a set rate of 0.0333. So that rate stays the same. That's strictly based on the assessed values. So it actually went up 28% from 57,000 to almost 74,000. And that's just from the increase of assessed values around the lake. From the management, the water quality, how we can take care of it. Our total revenue for non-tax revenue was up 2.3%. Again, the park was a big portion of that. That was up almost 12% year over year. The wakeboard fees and then just our watercraft permits went up just under 3%. For some expense on fiscal performance, the decrease from 2024, that was primarily us not doing hydraulic dredging. I wanted to go back through, we get a lot of questions on the taxes. So I actually went and looked at what the current rates are. We picked some real examples in Monroe County and Brown County and looked at the county taxes and the Lake Limit Conservancy District taxes, because a lot of people think a bulk of their taxes come to us or they associate us with those increases. So this would be based on a $500,000 home. These are rate accurate comparisons. So in Monroe County, on a $500,000 home, you're spending right around $9,000 in taxes. But this would scale no matter the value. About 22% of the property taxes that you're paying in Monroe County would come to the Conservancy District through the special benefits tax and the cumulative conservancy improvement tax. In Brown County, that raises to about 32.7% of your total tax. And that's just because the property taxes are lower in Brown County. However, the rate remains exactly the same between properties. So the Monroe County and the Brown County would pay the same amount of LLCD taxes because our rates is the same, just that percentage changes. The wetland mitigation project, we planted over 1,000 native plugs and then did seed mix last year. I believe it was in December, we planted 200 button bush live stakes around this area. These are ones that can grow in the open water. Completed the first year of monitoring. It all met the hydrology standards. It's wet. We had 67% dominance of facultative or wetter species, which are wetland species. And then during those times, they're free of our targeted invasives. And then that vegetation cover will continue to increase. Actually, the county is going to be paying about $12,000 as well for some additional seeding this year. All right, additional improvements. We did shoreline stabilization reclamation around Rural Point Park. It's primarily reclaiming riprap, lake-wide debris removals. We established our authorized wake zone. And after we got the quotes of $5,000 to $6,000 for signage, we built one in-house. Continued our regulatory and safety buoy network. Continued our invasive species controls, reduced costs. We sold off equipment we're not using, increased the monitoring and enforcement of our sublease and shoreline and those common areas. And then also kind of enhanced our coordination with DNR conservation officers. So looking ahead to 2026, we'll be completing our bathhouse renovations at Riddle Point Park. We're doing the targeted park infrastructure upgrades, which would be the asphalt, our bollards. We've continued doing vegetation management, clearing of shorelines, a lot of work going in there. We'll be working this year a lot on securing the long-term sediment disposal and placement options to either build new sites or clear out sites from our little Africa upland site to reutilize that. Continue establishing our wetland and ecological monitoring, trying to continue to grow community events at Riddle Point Park, working on a fishery management plan, and then just generally continuing our fiscally responsible enhancement of water quality, recreation, and our community. Thank you. If there's any questions or. Yes.
I don't know if it's related to this, but are you going to introduce Chris?
Yeah, this would be a good time to jump into. We have Chris Connor here, the new operations supervisor. If you want to.
I just introduced my name and title, but I grew up around here. If anyone's been to Appleworks, then I grew up a couple of houses down from that, so it's right on the Johnson-Brown County border. I'm pretty sure I caught my first fish at Lake Lemon.
That's why you're interested in fish.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I was too young to remember, but grew up in the area. I graduated from IU in 2017 with a degree in environmental management. I bounced around, did a lot of different things. After college, I worked at a national wildlife refuge for a while, doing visitor services and environmental education stuff. Then I moved down to Louisiana. I was a fisheries biologist down there for 4 or 5 years, did a lot of split between field work and a lot of educational programming stuff. Eventually moved back, worked with the DNR here for a little while, running their fishing programs. Switched to working for a place called Jones Lake Management as a field biologist for a little while. Then this opportunity popped up and I couldn't pass up on it. But so yeah, I have a background in aquatic sciences and education and just general like program management, event management, things like that. So I'm a straight shooter, so I tend to be a man of few words when I can swing that. But so if you ever need me to speak up on anything, just ask, and don't worry about hurting my feelings. If you have anything to say that you think I could be doing better in my position, just let me know. I'm very good at staying emotionally segregated from my job. So
Well, welcome.
Welcome, glad to have you.
It's okay.
We're running pretty short on time. Is it very pertinent?
Something I haven't talked about.
Real quick, very quickly.
You said 750 residential boat permits annual. Does that 750 include people that live here part-time, just recreational people, or full-time residents?
I think that number was referring to a reduction in daily passes, but I think our resident passes are just under 1,000. I'd have to look. That is not everybody there, that's 750.
Do you know how many people live here year-round in the Conservancy?
Close to 520.
520.
That own properties, not necessarily
They
year-round
don't-
residents.
They live here year-round.
No.
No,
No.
I'd say half those, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Any other questions from the board? I wanted, so since we are getting into the season, last year we were talking about, with what's considered wake surfing and ballast and whatever. And I had suggested in the gatehouse having a little laminated thing of basically, does this apply to you so that they don't have to deal with people trying to, are we doing that or?
Yes, yeah, we do have that, and actually in the print production right now is a smaller version of our wake zone area maps, and then our rules and regulations on the back. That'll be in a little postcard waterproof handout that we will give out with all of our wake sales for annuals and dailies.
All right.
Well, on that order, did you move? We will be moving all the buoys out further the way we said we would, because I don't know that we did that last year, did we?
No, we ultimately decided in discussion to leave them where they were at the 200-foot mark from, yeah. But I mean, it's something we could look at, putting them, 400 feet out.
I thought that's what we decided. I'd have to go back.
Well, then you're
I thought-
almost restricting it to idle speed in that 400 feet, and that's not really. I think you gotta trust or, people are stay that much farther away from shore than the buoys. I think we'd
I
have
think we have
trouble.
time to have this conversation. Like, we're running pretty long. I think we
Yeah,
have to have this conversation before season, so let's do this at the next one. Thanks for that, Adam. I guess we'll do the vote pass drawing.
Did everybody get a chance to put a ticket in there?
I'll get my ticket. See, he wanted to go to the top.
Make sure you shake
Yeah,
that
shake it
box.
up.
Or wait for a second.
That was my plan, come in late on time.
Speaking of music at Riddle Point, I just started, started taking banjo lessons about 3 months ago.
Nice.
This year, I could probably take donations to get me to stop playing.
Yeah,
And then, so I could do like a little fundraiser. I'll go out there and start playing. If you want me to stop, throw it out. Next year.
Nice.
Ready?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and draw two, after the meeting come up, and we will give you the voucher for this. It's Art.
Art.
All right, congratulations, Art.
Thank you.
And Robert. Robert Still.
All right, you want a boat pass?
Steel?
Yep.
Yep.
You have a boat, Robert?
Bingo.
All right, so after the meeting come up, and we'll give you your vouchers for those.
All right, now we just have to do two, oath of office swearing, our board members from areas 2 and 3, Malcolm and Deb.
2 and 6.
Sorry, 2 and 6. Need to do these separately or can we
We can do them together.
So we can stand up or anything like that, or-
Okay, it seems appropriate.
All right, we were talking beforehand that for the next cycle, we're gonna get like a golden lemon that you have to put your hand on. and then your oath on. All right,
Thank you, sir.
so repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I shall, to the best of my ability,
that I shall, to the best of my ability,
strive to accomplish the purposes
try to accomplish the purposes
for which the district is established
for which the district is established,
and to properly operate and maintain
to properly operate and maintain
its works of improvement.
its works of improvement.
Congratulations. Welcome back.
Thank you for your continued service.
Do you need to sign this?
Yeah, sign that and please give it to me.
And then moving on to the board officers. I think the three of us that are currently on the board are willing to serve in our roles, but are open to conversation if anybody else would like to nominate or like to have discussion.
I would propose that we maintain same officers.
I agree.
And makes that easy.
right.
Do we need to take any kind of vote on that?
Yeah, just take a motion to maintain our
Motion
current
to maintain
officers.
current officers.
Motion to maintain.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And anybody opposed? So ayes, motion carries. And next meeting is gonna be here, April 23rd, same time. Is that 2 months from? Wait, no.
Yep.
Yeah. Other than that, meeting is adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Sorry.
So.
Motion to
Look at Debbie first and.
Oh, I do too. Like.
Everybody, ayes?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.